Right. Should be live now, yeah, Rod?
Yeah, you're live and we can see your screen.
All right, perfect. So, been a little busy with other work last week. I don't have too much to show off that's new. Yeah, I've just been doing a little bit more practice with ADSM today.
Uh-huh.
So, I've been working on an ADSM for a web app. We know we're going to be working with Apache Tomcat, and what we're hoping to do is kind of create a couple ADSMs to help us outline security requirements, what we need to do.
Uh-huh.
So, before the stream, I was just adding some recommendations to each of these. I got started with the Tomcat server, and then we kicked off the stream here. So, I guess my first question is, how many recommendations should I try to have for each of them? Is there a number that would be considered too much or too little?
There are no specific constraints there because it really depends on your knowledge of the target. Like, for example, if you have worked with Tomcat for many years, you really have deep knowledge about its working, its security, what options does it give you to secure it. All of that can be put into recommendations. The general idea about recommendation is that it's a recommendation. So they may or may not pick it, or they may only implement a part of it. So if you understand that idea about recommendation, that should drive your typically your list.
Okay, and then the counterpart is mitigations, right? And that's something they're already doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe we'd want to move, keep it to the latest release over here then.
Yeah, and mitigations is just a plain text list of things that you have seen they've already taken care of. This is just for your reference and for readers' reference to give them a context of what's already in place. The idea is that if a mitigation is taking care of a set of attacks, you don't want to include them in ADM because all you're doing is writing attacks and defenses and just proving that it's mitigated.
Okay.
Sometimes that may not be the best use of your time, right?
Right. Yeah, if something's mitigated, you wouldn't
Yeah.
want to be adding something that's mitigated as a given statement.
Yeah, but sometimes certain domains want that to be documented. For example, heavily regulated industries like automotive or aerospace, they want everything on paper, everything in a document. At that time, instead of putting it as a mitigation, building an ADM for it makes more sense.
Okay.
But for regular cases, if it's mitigated, normally you don't want to spend time building an ADM.
All right, that makes sense. I think what else. So, unfortunately, I didn't make any ADMs for any of these. That would probably be our next step. Yeah.
One thing with the infrastructure components is building ADM is also a little more difficult because you have to kind of sift through public sources of information to really understand what's possible and what's not. Because this is software somebody else has written, you'll have to kind of dig around the internet, look for details, and it takes more time to build ADMs for infrastructure components.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. You kind of have to search up the known vulnerabilities and attacks on it. Yeah, we've been using the MITRE framework to kind of help us with that. That's definitely been a pretty good resource for when I was making the ones from the earlier streams.
Yeah, MITRE, CAPEC, all of them are good sources. Even blogs on security, there are dedicated blog sites that only talk about security. They are also a good source.
Okay.
And probably the one last source that you may be interested in is the CVE database itself. Just that you need to look for CVEs that are not mitigated, which is again like searching needle in a haystack.
Right.
If Tomcat has 100 CVEs, chances are that 99 of them are already fixed. So you have to look for that one CVE that's not yet fixed. So it takes time.
Okay. Can you search for ones that aren't fixed in the CVE database? I really don't use it much.
I think so. As far as I remember, it is possible. If not, they have an API that you can still use to pull data and run a Python script to look for something.
Okay. So let's see. Let me generate the report for this real quick. Just make sure everything's coming out right. So let's see. I kind of forgot the command. It's so the path would just be /, right?
You'll have to put a sub command, either report or stat or something like that. Yeah, ADSM report, I think is what you want.
Yep.
Yeah, and / should be fine.
Let's just talk about ADDB.
Yeah.
And then that's probably going to overwrite my initial report, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's my endpoint security. Okay, yeah, so here's the new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how would I go about getting this to an ADDB? Is that something I should just create inside the workspace, or should I open up a separate folder for that?
It's better to put it in a separate folder so that multiple ADSMs can feed into it or source from it. Because it's a repository, keeping it separate is recommended. But if it's a single engagement and that's all you're going to do, then putting it in a subdirectory still is okay.
All right. Well, I'm just gonna add it in here for the time being. You can always move it. So, oh wait, we definitely don't want it in report. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oops. Okay, so I would just copy this directly in there, or is there anything else I need to do?
So each entity has to be a separate entry in ADDB. So it should be a separate file. So for example, Apache Tomcat is a separate file, hosting server is a separate file, and so on.
Okay, so to generate that, so I would call this what, like Tomcat?
Yeah, you can name it anything. It's not going to care about the file name.
Should be an SM spec though, right?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, and then I would just go and copy.
Yep.
It wouldn't want to be a list item though, yeah?
Yes. So if you go into security design GitHub repository, you can look at how ADDB entries look there.
This is workspace.
Yeah,
Okay,
under that, yeah, there is an ADDB, yes. So I tend to group it into directories. Grouping or directory structure doesn't really matter when it's parsing it. So if you pick one of the directories, yeah, go into one more, yeah. So it just has an ADM. If you go to something like a language or a technology, if you go there,
okay,
go.sm.
SM spec.
Yeah. So
we have 3 dashes.
So in YAML, 3 dashes basically says when the YAML structure starts and when it ends. So 3 dashes, and at the end it's 3 dots. And everything has to be. So the type name, everything has to be indented back because there is no substructure here. No, sorry. ID type, everything is at the same level.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a single object, so all of them are at the same level.
Got it. And then now I should be able to, if I save this, if I go back to web app, how would I replace this here with the bit from the ADDB?
So what you do is base. After description, you put an entry called base. Base colon, give the name of your, ADD, open square brackets because you can have multiple bases. Yeah, and you say ADDB colon and the name of the ID that you have in your ADDB.
So that would be Apache Tomcat.
Yeah. And you'll still need the ADM entry because it's a mandatory field. Yeah.
So, but if I had declared stuff for ADM here, I could leave that blank here, no problem, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because it would pull that from there. Okay. And then it'll know to look in here, or do I have to define the ADDB at the top somewhere?
After the title, after title, you have to say ADDB colon. The path, relative path is good enough. So you can say /test ADDB. Or I'm not sure whether, I'll have to look into the code. I was also working on an absolute path option. Let's try relative path. If the tool fails, we'll have to.
Does this need to be in brackets? Or can you not import from multiple?
Currently, it's just one ADDB.
It's just one? Okay. And it has to be on your system somewhere. You can't pull it from GitHub?
No, that support is not yet there. I need to add that.
Okay. All right, so if we run this again, let me actually make a quick change. Let's add. Use. Probably should be a mitigation, but. Okay, so then.
Or you should probably just put the single ADSM because it's looking at two ADSMs and trying to generate report, I think.
Okay, so this would be /web app then here?
Yeah. So it should have generated a web app report. Yeah. Now, if you see, it's saying that from the base.
Yeah. Okay. And then if I wanted to add an ADM for this, I would want to probably I'd create it in here, right? Same directory as the
you can.
SM spec.
Yeah.
Tomcat.m. Oops. Okay.
scan for old versions, maybe.
It's probably not great, but
Yeah, for demo sake, probably this should
yeah,
be.
it'll do it. It just needs to have an attack and defense, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So then in here we would just put in Tomcat .adm.
Yep.
And then if we go and rerun this, we should see a bit more in resources, right?
Yes.
Yeah, these shouldn't change, yeah?
Shouldn't.
Oh. Should these be blank?
They shouldn't be. Can you clear that? Okay, you have it there.
Maybe these are something I made on accident.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, yeah, but then, yeah, if you go in web app adsm, that adm.dot, it has this properly. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, VS Code is opening a lot of weird stuff. It should be open here. I need to close some things. I'm going to close everything over here other than where graph is. There we go. All right, that's a little better. Look at the wrong file again. Okay, well, that's good. So the next step for this would just be probably defining requirements for everything, and maybe trying to move some of this to our ADDB.
Yes. So anything that's usable across models and across projects, it's better to put it in ADDB. So all infrastructure components, it's normally a good idea to have an entry in ADDB.
Okay, so
And you
maybe
can,
for this, the only things that really can go in are Tomcat and then maybe the different browsers you can use.
Mm-hmm.
And then like internal user, that's going to be a little bit different for each application, right? I would think
Yes.
that wouldn't make a lot of sense for an ADDB.
Unless they have specific personas that are common across applications.
Okay. And
Like
then maybe for a
traditional
hosting
companies.
server, it's better to define a specific one and then add that to an ADDB. Because like a Linux server is
Yes.
obviously going to have different vulnerabilities than a Windows one.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where in ADDB, you may want to use namespacing. So if you go back to my ADDB repository, I can show you an example. So if you see the ID, okay, go to languages and open go.smspec, for example. So if you see the ID is actually lang.go, it's not just a name. So I can now use namespacing saying lang.go, lang.java, lang.python, and so on.
Yeah, it's
The
better
idea
organized.
is, yeah. Tomorrow, if you're writing a
I
digital,
should probably have, so I open up Tomcat, I should probably have like browser.
or
No,
you can
not
say
browser.
you can say Apache.tomcat because Apache is the organization, Tomcat is their tool. And then before Apache, you can put other groupings like let's say servers.apache or something like that. Servers.apache.tomcat. So now
Okay,
tomorrow, if you're
then
running,
we just go back. Change that to a dot.
Yep.
Okay, well that's good. Unfortunately, that's really about all I have. Do you have any questions about sort of the next steps for the process, Rod?
So in this ADSM specifically, instead of using generic entities, I would recommend make it as specific as possible. For example, internal browser, if they are typically using Microsoft laptops, chances are that it's just Edge. If it's a company with a mix of platforms, you may want to show Safari, Chrome, Edge, and Firefox as 4 separate browsers, all connecting up into Apache, for example. For
Okay,
your
so
scenario,
how would I visualize that then? Would I have sort of multiple bases then for browser here?
no, you will have to put separate entities there. So instead of saying internal browser as one entity,
So we'd
you
have
have
like
4
internal
separate
browser,
entities.
Chrome, and then
Yeah,
make a copy like internal browser, Firefox, Safari, Edge. Okay.
yeah. Similarly, it
We'll
goes
just
to
do that
hosting
to
server, web server, and all of them.
myself.
What happens is that every piece of software is different, although you may bucket them under a common term called browser. In reality, that's truly not the case.
Yeah, and they of course all have different vulnerabilities. Okay.
And similarly, for example, if Apache Tomcat uses Apache Web Server, for example, internally to host pages, in your ADDB, you may want to actually have a base for Tomcat also. So you can have one ADDB being a base for another.
Okay.
So it's a recursive structuring. So tomorrow you can have a web server generic spec in ADDB, and under Apache Tomcat you will refer that as the base, and in your ADSM you will refer Tomcat as the base. So it's a 3 level of inheritance of recommendations, ADMs, and everything. And you'll kind of see that structure in the repository that I have on GitHub.
Okay, well, if we did that, then we might be able to share some of the higher level ones publicly as well. So that's good.
So I don't have it for browsers, I think. It's still in early stages. So anything that can be added, if it is generic, I would say you should contribute to it. But even otherwise, if it's a company where you have only items unique to them, maintaining a client-specific ADDB is still a good idea.
I know that in some of the scenarios that we're working through, we're starting out very, very high level, just because we're trying to just start out with general security requirements. So
Right.
I think we could probably start there and get as specific without getting into any detail. But then we could share with that way. It's more shareable.
Yeah. Normally, my recommendation is build a project or a customer-specific ADDB first. Don't bother about contributions. Once you're done with the project, once you have cleaned up your repository and everything, then looking at what items are generic enough that you can contribute to open source makes a lot more sense. Because in that heat of the moment, you may not really figure out whether it's possible to open source it or not.
Okay.
All right. I think if we manage to have a good inheritance structure, though, we could open source it. Hopefully, a good chunk of what we're working with here.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have anything else. I'm just coming off of some out of office time, so I wish I had a little bit more to share, but I don't have anything right now, Vinay. And if Joe, if you're good on your end, we could.
Yeah, I don't really have any more questions or things to show off.
Okay. Vinay, we're trying to be mindful of your time. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So one last thing for ADDB entries, there's a separate component schema. So on the top, if you want to refer your YAML language server to that, then you get structure validation also there. So
Okay,
on
and
top,
that can probably just grab that from one of these on
yeah,
GitHub,
okay.
right?
Yep, you can do that.
All right, Dimitri, William, do you have any questions we can cover on the stream?
Not at the moment for me.
Not at the moment, sir.
Okay. Well, being mindful of everybody's time, thank you very much, Vinay, for everything. And, next week we'll have a little bit more.
Yep.
Joe, thank you for
All right.
coming with questions. William and Dimitri, have a great day. I'll go ahead and close it out, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right.
Sounds good.